"That is true, isn't it?" she said. "Oh, aye," said Rob Anybody slowly. "She didn't lie to ye there. The Gwyn'll tried to be kind to him, but she disn't know how. She's an elf. They're no very good at thinking of other people." "What will happen to him if we don't get him back?" Again there was that "we didn't like the way this is going" look. "I said," Tiffany repeated. "I dare say she'll send him back in due time," said William. "And he willna be any older. Nothink grows old here. Nothink grows. Nothink at all." "So he'll be all right?" Rob Anybody made a noise in his throat. It sounded like a voice that was trying to say "aye," but was being argued with a brain that knew the answer was "no." "Tell me what you're not telling me," said Tiffany. Daft Woolly was the first to speak. "That's a lot of stuff," he said. "For example, the melting point of lead is—" "Time passes slower the deeper you go into this place," said Rob Anybody quickly. "Years pass like days. The Gwyn'll get tired of the wee lad after a couple of months, maybe. A couple of months here, ye ken, where the time is slow and heavy. But when he comes back into the mortal world, you'll be an old lady, or maybe you'll be deed. So if yous has bairns of your own, you better tell them to watch out for a wee sticky kid wandering the hills shouting for sweeties, 'cause that'll be their Uncle Wentworth. That wouldn't be the worst of it, neither. Living dreams for too long, and you go mad. You can never wake up properly. You can never get the hang of reality again." Tiffany stared at him. "It's happened before," said William. "I will get him back," said Tiffany quietly. "We don't doubt it," said Rob Anybody. "And where'er ye go, we'll come with ye. The Knack-Mack Feegle are afeard of nothing." A cheer went up, but it seemed to Tiffany that the blue shadows sucked all the sound away. "Aye, nothing except in lawyers." Daft Woolly tried to say before Rob managed to shut him up. Tiffany turned back to the line of hoofprints and began to walk. The snow squeaked unpleasantly underfoot. She went a little way, watching the trees get realer as she approached them, and then looked around. All the Knack-Mack Feegles were creeping along behind her. Rob Anybody gave her a cheery nod, and all her footprints had become holes in the snow, with grass showing through. The trees began to annoy her. The way things changed was more frightening than any monster. You could hit a monster, but you couldn't hit a forest, and she wanted to hit something. She stopped and scraped some snow away from the base of a tree, and, just for a moment, there was nothing but greyness where it had been. As she watched, the bark grew down to where the snow was. Then it just stayed there, pretending it had been there all the time. It was a lot more worrying than the Grimhounds. They were just monsters. They could be beaten. This was frightening. She was second thinking again. She felt the fear grow. She felt her stomach become a red-hot lump. She felt her elbows begin to sweat. But it was not connected. She watched herself being frightened, and that meant that there was still this part of herself, the watching part that wasn't. The trouble was, it was being carried on legs that were. It had to be very careful, and that was where it went wrong. Fear gripped her all at once. She was in a strange world, with monsters being followed by hundreds of little blue thieves, and black dogs, headless horsemen, monsters in the river, sheep whizzing backwards across fields, voices under the bed. The terror took her, but because she was Tiffany, she ran towards it, raising the pan. She had to get through the forest, find the Queen, get her brother, leave this place. Somewhere behind her, voices started to shout. She woke up. There was no snow, but there was the whiteness of the bedsheet and the plaster ceiling of her bedroom. She stared at it for a while, then leaned down and peered under the bed. There was nothing there but the gazunder. When she flung open the door of the doll's house, there was no one inside but the 2 toy soldiers and the teddy bear and the headless dolly. The walls were solid. The floor creaked like it always did. Her slippers were the same as they always were, old, comfortable, and with all the pink fluff worn off. She stood in the middle of the floor and said, very quietly, "Is there anybody there?" Sheep barred in the distant hillside, but they probably hadn't heard her. The door squeaked open, and the cat Ratbag came in. He rubbed up against her legs, purring like a distant thunderstorm, and then went and curled up on her bed. Tiffany got dressed thoughtfully, daring the room to do something strange. When she got downstairs, breakfast was cooking. Her mother was busy at the sink. Tiffany darted out through the scullery and into the dairy. She scrambled on hands and knees around the floor, peering under the sink and behind the cupboards. "You can come out now, honestly," she said. No one came. She was alone in the room. She'd often been alone in the room and had enjoyed it. It was almost her private territory. But now, somehow, it was too empty, too clean. When she wandered back into the kitchen, her mother was still standing by the sink, washing dishes, but a plate of steaming porridge had been put down in the one set place on the table. "I'll make some more butter today," said Tiffany, carefully sitting down. "I might as well, while we're getting all this milk." Her mother nodded and put a plate on the draining board beside the sink. "I haven't done anything wrong, have I?" said Tiffany. Her mother shook her head. Tiffany sighed. And then she woke up, and it was all a dream. It was just about the worst ending you could have to any story, but it all seemed so real. She could remember the smoky smell in the Pixie's cave, and the way... Who was it? Oh yes, he'd been called Rob Anybody. The way Rob Anybody had always been so nervous about talking to her. It was strange, she thought, that Ratbag had rubbed up against her. He'd sleep on her bed if he could get away with it, but during the day he kept well out of Tiffany's way. Now what? There was a rattling noise near the mantelpiece. The china shepherdess on Granny's shelf was moving sideways of its own accord, and, as Tiffany watched with her porridge spoon halfway to her mouth, it slid off and smashed on the floor. The rattling went on. Now it was coming from the big oven. She could see the door actually shaking on the hinges. She turned to her mother and saw her put another plate down by the sink, but it wasn't being held in a hand. The oven door burst open and slid across the floor. "Dinna eat the porridge!" Mac Feagles spilled out into the room, hundreds of them pouring across the tiles. The walls were shifting, the floor moved, and now the thing turning round at the sink was not even human, but just stuff. No more human than a gingerbread man, grey as old dough, changing shape as it lumbered towards Tiffany. The pixies surged past her in a flurry of snow. She looked up at the thing's tiny black eyes. The scream came from somewhere deep inside. There was no second thought, no first thought, just a scream. It seemed to spread out as it left Tiffany's mouth until it became a black tunnel in front of her. And as she fell into it, she heard in the commotion behind her, "Who d'ye think you're looking at, pal? Crivens, but you're going to get such a kicking." Tiffany opened her eyes. She was lying on damp ground in the snowy, gloomy wood. Pixies were watching her carefully, but she saw there were others behind them, staring outwards into the gloom amongst the tree trunks. There was stuff in the trees, lumps of stuff. It was grey and hung there like old cloth. She turned her head and saw William standing beside her, looking at her with concern. "That was a dream, wasn't it?" she said. "Well, no," said William. "It was, and there again it wasn't." Tiffany sat up suddenly, causing the pixies to leap back. "But that thing was in it, and then you all came out of the oven," she said. "You were in my dream. What is it? What was that creature?" William the Gonigal stared at her, as if trying to make up his mind. "That was what we call a drome," he said. "Nothing here really belongs here, remember. Everything is a reflection from outside, or something kidnapped from another world, or maybe something the Queen has made out of magic. It was hiding in the trees, and you was going so fast you didn't see it. You ken spiders?" "Of course." "Well, spiders spin webs. Dromes spin dreams. That's easy in this place. The world you come from is nearly real. This place is nearly unreal, so it's almost a dream anyway. And the drome makes a dream for you. We are trapping it. If you eats anything in the dream, you'll never want to leave it." He looked as though Tiffany should have been impressed. "What's in it for the drome?" she asked. "It likes watching dreams. It has fun watching you have fun, and it'll watch you eating dream food until you starve to death. Then the drome will eat you. Not right away, of course. It'll wait until you've gone a wee bit runny, because it hasn't teeth." "So how can anyone get out?" The best way is to find the drone, said Rob Anybody. It'll be in the dream with you in disguise. Then you just gives it a good kicking. By kicking you mean chopping its head off generally works. Now Tiffany thought, I am impressed. I wish I wasn't. And this is fairyland, she said. Aye, you could say it's the bit the tourist didn't see, said William. And you did well. You were fighting it. You knew it wasn't right. Tiffany remembered the friendly cat and the falling shepherdess. She'd been trying to send messages to herself. She should have listened. Thank you for coming after me, she said meekly. How did you do it? Ah, we can generally find a way into anywhere, even a dream, said William, smiling. We're stealing folk after all. A piece of the drone fell out of the tree and flopped onto the snow. One of them won't get me again, said Tiffany. I believe you. You have murder in your eyes, said William, with a touch of admiration. If I was a drone, I'd be pretty fearful noo, if I had a brain. There'll be more of them, mark ye. And some of them are cunning. The Queen uses them as guards. I won't be fooled. Tiffany remembered the horror of the moment when the thing had lumbered around, changing shape. It was worse because it was in her house, her place. She'd felt real terror as the big shapeless thing crashed across the kitchen. But the anger had been there too. It was invading her place. The thing wasn't just trying to kill her, it was insulting her.